The AP will do it wrong, so we're here to do it right. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, here with our Week 10 GE Top 25 poll. A poll that seems to be changing in big ways every single week. And while Week 9 wasn't the craziest weekend we've seen this year, the changes in the games that we saw from that week led to some new teams in our top 10 and some newcomers to our rankings as a whole. And of course, we're here to break those down today. A poll that we do believe is more thought out and better than the AP, and certainly better than whatever the heck the playoff committee is going to put out next week. And of course, we'll be here with our live reaction with that next week when it's released. But let's go ahead and dive into our rankings, our GE Top 25 poll. And if you take a look in the top 10, there's no changes in our top 7. And there really shouldn't be, right? Oregon, of course, deserves to remain at number 1. They destroyed a top 20 team in Illinois, 38-9, looking all the part as the number 1 team in the country. The Ducks stay up top. Georgia had their bye week, still kind of riding the high from that win on the road against Texas. They stay at number 2. Penn State went on the road to a tough Wisconsin team. I kind of went bold, and I predicted Wisconsin to pull off that upset. And they were hanging with Penn State for a while. The Nittany Lions eventually wore them down, were the better team, won 28-13 on the road. They stay at number 3, and they have a huge game at home this Saturday against number 4, Ohio State, who barely survived Nebraska 21-17. Now, I know a lot of people would say, well, Ohio State should drop because of that. And my question is, where? Where would you drop Ohio State? Would you drop them below Miami? Would you drop them below Texas? Would you drop them outside the top 7? I don't think so. The Buckeyes are still playing very, very good football. Their only loss on the year was by 1 point on the road at Oregon. I still got the Ohio State at number 4. We'll see how they fare on the road against Penn State this Saturday. We'll have a prediction for that game coming out here in just a few days. But the Buckeyes staying put after narrowly surviving the Cornhuskers. Miami staying at number 5, beating Florida State 36-14. I was surprised it was a little bit worse. I really thought the Hurricanes would put it on the Seminoles. They really didn't score a couple touchdowns till late. It was a relatively close game until late in the fourth quarter. But Miami did pull away for that 22-point win. They remain a top 5 team in our eyes and still the best team currently in the ACC. Clemson might have something to say about that, though. Texas, before we get to Clemson, is at number 6. They survived number 25, Vanderbilt, 27-24. Look, Vandy's the real deal. 3 years ago, if you said Texas barely beat Vanderbilt by 3, everybody would be concerned. Vanderbilt played a very good game. We know what they're capable of. They've beat Alabama. They've beat Kentucky. They've hung with some top dogs this year. Beat a Virginia Tech team that is kind of slowly working their way back and fought very hard and valiantly against Texas. So I'm not going to dog on Texas too much for that narrow victory. And keep in mind, they were up by 10 before Vanderbilt added that late touchdown to make it a 3-point game. Clemson in at number 7. They are legitimate in the ACC. Very legit college football playoff contenders. They have steamrolled everybody since that bad loss against Georgia in week 1. And we say bad because of the margin, not because it was a bad team. So really, and that was only one half. They were only down, 6-0 at halftime? So one bad half for Clemson, and that's been it. They've steamrolled everybody else. I do believe they're a top 10 team. I know the AP poll has them outside the top 10. I disagree. Keep me Clemson at number 7. A couple newcomers into our top 10. Notre Dame jumps in. When you destroy a top 25 team, I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're Navy or Illinois. I don't care. That says a lot, right? Notre Dame steamrolled Navy 51-14, outrushed the midshipmen for 6 turnovers on the day. They looked all the part as a playoff team. I know that Northern Illinois loss hurts, but Notre Dame does have a handful of quality wins on their resume, and that road win by double digits against Texas A&M continues to look better and better with each passing week, which is huge for Notre Dame and their playoff hopes. So they skyrocket from number 11 to number 8. BYU, I've seen your comments. Everybody, why is it BYU in the top 10? Why aren't they in the top 10? They're in the top 10 now. I do believe they deserve to be in the top 10 now. The Cougars debuting there at number 9. Went on the road against UCF as an underdog. Cougars were underdogs against a UCF team that had a losing record and won that game by double digits. So BYU is really torching people left and right. Their two closest games were that road win against SMU and that narrow win over Oklahoma State. They're undefeated. They're playing great ball on both sides of the ball, and the schedule lines up very favorable for Kalani Sitake and his squads. I love what BYU's doing. They're into the top 10. I love what they were doing before they were in the top 10. We weren't a BYU hater. We had nothing against the Cougars. I just thought there were a couple other teams that deserved to be ahead of them. But after that win over UCF on the road in a hostile environment against a good rushing team, putting on a good defensive performance. The offense continuing to roll. Yeah, they're top 10 caliber now, and so much so I have them above Texas A&M, who jumps into our top 10 from 15th, moves up 5 spots after their win over LSU, 38-23. The Aggies, again, playing phenomenal football, have not lost since they lost to Notre Dame in the season opener. They are the top dog in the SEC right now, the lone unbeaten team in the SEC right now, at least in conference play. The Aggies are legitimate college football playoff contenders, especially when you realize their schedule's so favorable, should win or should be favored in every game, with the exception of maybe that Texas game in the season finale. So watch out for Mike Elko and the Aggies. So that's our top 10. Notre Dame, BYU, and Texas A&M all joining the top 10 compared to our rankings that we had last week. You go in through 11 through 20, Iowa State and Tennessee both moved out. And it's not because they did anything wrong or bad. It's because Texas A&M beat LSU. It's because BYU continues to roll. It's because Notre Dame torched Navy. Iowa State and Tennessee both were on their bye week. I'm not necessarily punishing them for not playing. The teams don't deserve to be punished for that. But obviously the teams that were behind them played and won comfortably, won big, beat quality opponents, and they deserve to jump Iowa State and Tennessee, at least as of this moment. Still very quality teams, still absolutely playoff contenders, but both on the outside of the top 10 right now. We'll see what these two teams do as they bounce back in Week 10. Indiana stays at 13. Here's the thing with Indiana. I want Indiana in the top 10 so bad. I wish I could put them there, but here's the thing. They're playing great ball. They're undefeated. They haven't trailed for a second. Haven't trailed for a single second this year. So all the credit in the world to Curt Cignetti and this team, and especially for beating Washington 31-17 without Curtis Warwick at quarterback. But Indiana only has one win over a team that currently has a record above 500. They currently have one win over a team that has a record above 500, and that is Nebraska. They torched Nebraska. We know that. Nebraska almost beat Ohio State. We understand that. But the Hoosiers do not have a ranked win. Most of the teams they've beat up on have been in the bottom of the Big Ten standings or have been very bad group of 5 teams. They're a very good football team. I do believe they can finish the year at 11-1. I do believe they are college football playoff contenders. But I cannot put them above Tennessee or Iowa State or A&M or BYU or Notre Dame. Even though they're undefeated, some of those teams have losses, I cannot put them above them considering the teams that we just mentioned all have better quality wins than Indiana has right now. So keep the Hoosiers at number 13. They have opportunities to grow. They still got to play Michigan. They still got to go on the road to Ohio State. They will have their opportunities to crack the top 10. And again, even if they finish 11-1, they have a very good shot at making the college football playoffs. So still, America's team, maybe. They've been very, very fun to watch, but keeping them at number 13 despite beating Washington by double digits. Alabama up 2 spots, up to number 14. Now, here's where things get interesting here. 14 through 17 to me. Alabama's up 2. They beat a top 25 team in Missouri 34-0. Absolutely torched them. So, yeah, they deserve to move up a couple spots for that. So, they're up to number 14. Pittsburgh looked really, really good, defensively especially. Beat Syracuse 41-13. Had, 5 interceptions, 2 of them or 3 of them were pick sixes. I mean, it was unbelievably dominant on the defensive side of the ball for Pittsburgh. I love what the Panthers are doing. Unbeaten, playing really good ball. We'll be interested to see how they fare on the road against SMU this week. A top 25 matchup. We will be breaking that down here on the channel here in a few days. But they deserve to go up 2 spots, up to number 15. Boise State won a very tough road game at UNLV, 29-24, the 2 best teams in the Mountain West Conference, and they did so behind a bad day from Ashton Jeanty, still rushing for well over 100 yards, 33 carries, and a touchdown. Still my Heisman favorite by a long shot. Kansas State, they've moved down 3 spots in our rankings, and they won. Okay, so I'm not punishing Kansas State. I'm looking at the teams that were behind them or in the vicinity of the Wildcats and what they did. Kansas State barely beating Kansas 29-27. Again, they probably should not have won. If Jalen Daniels doesn't fumble, Kansas wins that game and the Wildcats are plummeting in our rankings and they're probably out of the Big 12 title race. So you barely beat a Kansas team that had a losing record. And you've got a team like Boise State that won on the road against the other best team in their conference, a team like Pittsburgh that dominated a 5-win Syracuse team with the number 2 passing attack in the country, and an Alabama team that shut out a top 25 team. All of those to me are worthy of jumping you, who only won by 2 against a team you were favored by double digits in, and again, probably shouldn't have won. So Kansas State still a very good team. They're still a Big 12 title contender, but even though they won, they do drop a handful of spots because of what the teams behind them or around them did. That makes sense. So Kansas State at 17. LSU down 10 following their loss at Texas A&M. Again, they got outcoached, they got outplayed, and they just shot themselves in the foot way too many times. If Connor Wingman plays that entire game, LSU wins. But the Tigers had no answer for Marcel Reed, and the second half was disastrous, especially when it came to turnovers. The Tigers had 2 missed field goals. They had a botched snap on another. Nussmeier couldn't find any of his receivers in the second half. LSU, you could argue, should have won that game, but you could also argue that they were just simply outplayed in the second half, and that's all it takes. So LSU kind of plummeting there, taking their, second loss of the year. Now, kind of on the outside looking in, not just for the SEC race, but the college football playoff race as well. Ole Miss up a spot, beating Oklahoma by 12. Not a great dominant performance. The Rebels held to under 70 rushing yards on the day. It's very concerning there, but still got the win. SMU up a spot. Probably shouldn't have beat Duke. 6 turnovers the Mustangs committed, yet somehow found a way to win by 1 in overtime. Again, that Pittsburgh-SMU game on Saturday will be very, very interesting. That rounds out our top 20. Coming into the final 5, that's where things got really tough for me, right? Army moves up a spot. They were in our rankings. They move up 2 spots on their bye weeks. The Army, number 21. If Boise State slips up somewhere, watch out for the Black Knights, maybe contending for that Group of 5 playoff spot. But after that, look, we had 4 teams drop out of our top 25. Illinois dropped out for us. They were number 19. We had Missouri at number 22. They dropped out. Number 24, Navy. They dropped out. Number 25, Vanderbilt. They dropped out. We have 4 teams dropping out, which means we had to have 4 new teams come in. I know the AP poll still ranked Illinois and Missouri, and that was absolutely atrocious. It was disgusting. It was wrong. That shows how bad they are. It shows how bad the playoff committee is going to be as well. Missouri and Illinois do not deserve to be ranked. So, we had to replace 4 new teams. Who were they going to be? One of them was Washington State. The Cougars are 7-1. They're playing very good football right now. Their only loss was on the road to Boise State. So Washington State deserves to be ranked. Are they a playoff contender? No, but could they finish 11-1? Absolutely. And they're a very fun team, especially offensively, to watch. Colorado jumps in to our top 25. And look, they deserve it. The Buffaloes are going bowling. I was wrong. I didn't think they would. I didn't think they'd go bowling, but they've played very good football, a lot more disciplined football this year. Defensively have improved significantly. Obviously, the offense is still one of the best in the country with Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter. They just beat Cincinnati 34-23, so they come into our rankings at number 23. And then it was kind of tough. Those 2 I felt like were givens, but then I was like, who are the 2 other teams that we can put in there? You're going to put a 3-loss team in there? You're going to keep one of those other teams that lost in there? I mean, there weren't too many other teams across the country that felt truly top 25 worthy. And after really thinking long and hard about it, we put Memphis in, we put Tulane in. The Tigers are 7-1. Their only loss on the year came to Navy. Yes, they lost that game by 12, but really should have been a 1-possession loss. They had like an 86-yard pick 6 at the very end of the game that really sealed the win for the midshipmen. So Memphis into our rankings, not a bad loss by any means on their resume. They've won everything else. Yes, Florida State's really bad, but the Tigers still won that game on the road in Tallahassee. They're 7-1, could be a playoff team or contender if things get crazy in the Group of 5. And then Tulane, sticking in the American, I put them in as well. They beat North Texas, a very good offensive team, beat them 45-37 on the road. They are 6-2, guys. Tulane's 6-2, and their only losses are to Oklahoma and Kansas State. So undefeated in conference play, 2 solid losses there. One of them was only by 1 possession to Kansas State. Probably should have won that game. So Tulane, not a team you should be sleeping on either. Again, the Group of 5 race over the last month is going to be very, very interesting. On the outside looking in, we had Vanderbilt. Almost kept Vanderbilt in the top 25, even though they lost to Texas. Almost did. Dropped them out. But Vanderbilt right on the outside looking in. Louisiana out of the Sun Belt is 6-1, playing very good ball. Arkansas will be in our top 25 if they beat Ole Miss on Saturday. Navy still on the outside, but could sneak their win in there, and then UNLV as well. We had a long list of teams that we were prepared to usher in to the top 25 this week, and they all lost. Like, Duke lost. If they beat SMU, they would have been in there. Syracuse, if they beat Pittsburgh, they would have been in there. We had so many teams that were ready to go in, and they all lost, which made it very difficult to figure out who to put in for those final 3 spots. Finally settled on these teams: Washington State, Colorado, Memphis, and Tulane, all joining our GE Top 25 for the time being. So there you go, guys. Week 10. That's it. That's what we've got. Our top 25 teams. The top 7 remain unchanged. 3 new teams in the top 10. 4 new ranked teams joining the mix this year, or this week, I should say. It's going to be a very fun final month of the season. And, of course, these rankings will look drastically different when we come back next Monday with our Week 11 top 25. But until then, make sure to share your rankings down in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below, including our expert picks over on thegridironexpert.com. Some of the best picks in the entire country, beating out over 80% of the national handicappers each of the last 6 years. And currently doing so this year. The link for that down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.